my name is Raj Golay. I'm an art director at Moonfrog. It's based in Bangalore. And I've worked at Zynga. I've been there for like 7 years before I moved to Moonfrog about last year. And these are some of the games that we've worked on, including new IP work. And as you may know, new IP work is very hard to get through to the launch stage. So while I worked on a lot of new IPs, only some of them got through. So let's get started. Before I get started, I just want to understand the audience a little bit. How many of you are students? Whoa, okay, all right. And how many of you are already in the industry? Okay, cool. Right, thank you. So I'm going to show you a cartoon. It's by one of my favorite cartoonists. His name is Gary Larson. He has a strip called Far Side, and he takes a very skewed view of the world. This is probably too small for you to read. So basically, there's an artist there, right? He's drawing this cow, and when he gets to the head, he can't understand, he can't remember what is he supposed to draw there? Is it a cow head? Is it a hippopotamus head? Is it a dragon head? Is it a kangaroo head, right? And the caption says, "The curse of artist's block." So basically, this artist has lost context. He's lost context of what he is drawing and why he's drawing it. And I've seen a lot of artists fall into this, what I see as a trap, right? And I call that trap the tell me what to draw, I'll draw it trap. Or tell me what to animate, I'll animate it. Or tell me what to model, I'll model it, depending on which vertical of art you are in. For all the senior artists who may be here, right, and junior artists, especially the senior artists, if you are thinking, wait a second, I'm a senior artist, I don't get into that trap. Bear with me, hear me out, because I've seen from junior all the way to very, very senior artists who have been in the industry for 10, 15 years, who are in this trap and they don't realize it. Because once you get in this trap, then it'll be very difficult for you to progress in your career. So let's get to critical skill number 1. All right. So let's say your company is hiring an artist. You have 50 applications, right? What is the first thing that the company will look at to determine who to hire? Does anyone want to take a guess?
The cover letter of the portfolio.
No. I want to hire an artist. I'm looking at 50 applicants. What's the first thing I'm going to look at?
What is the base? What is the company doing present?
No, I'll tell you what, okay? They are looking for how good are you of an artist? How good are you as an animator? How good are you as a 3D artist? How good are you as a concept artist, right? Depending on what vertical you are in. So basically, they're looking at your core skill, right? If you don't have that core skill, you're not going to get hired. End of the story, right? It doesn't matter how good your cover letter is or whatever. If you can't draw, if you can't model, if you can't animate to the required quality, you won't be hired. That's the first skill that you need, right? This is absolute must. And then let's say out of those 50, you give them tests and you whittle it down to 2 artists, right? They're really good, but they're really good at the same level. So they have equal, they can hit the quality bar at an equal level, and they're also really fast, similarly paced. So their core skill is equal. Now, how are you going to decide out of those 2? How would the company decide who to hire? No? Based on that?
Communication or character.
Of the candidate?
Yeah, personal skills.
Right, awesome. Right, so there are these other skills that the company will look at. This talk is not about core skill. This talk, I'm not going to tell you how to be a better animator, how to be a better concept artist, how to be a modeler, right? There are lots of videos on YouTube. There are lots of talks. Even the talk right before here, right, that Vishu did, was basically, how to be, do the things that you need to do as a concept artist or a 3D modeler, right? So this talk is not about that. This talk is about the other skills that you need. If you have core skills, great, because you will need them. But just relying on core skills will only get you so far. You can only go so far up the career ladder, and then you'll get stuck there, right? So let's have a look at the first skill, critical skill number 2. How many of you have seen Titanic, the movie? And there are some of you who haven't seen Titanic. Oh my God. So how many of you are also familiar with this spoof magazine called Mad Magazine? Great. So do you remember in Titanic, the hero was an artist, Jack, right? He went around drawing portraits of people on the boat, and he'd been to France and he'd drawn portraits of the girls there. And when he meets Rose, the heroine from the movie, she says, Jack, draw me like you draw your French girls. Draw me in the nude, right? So there was that scene of that painting scene. So Mad had a different take on that, right? Right? So for the people who can't read this way at the back, it says, Jack, I said I'd like you to paint me in the nude, but I don't think you quite understood. Right, so what's broken down here? Something didn't happen. Something broke down. What is that? Communication. That's your skill number 2, right? Critical. And you mentioned it earlier, right? This is also, you should be aware that this is the number 1 area that all the game teams that I've been on have mentioned that artists lack this basic communication skills to, have a conversation about gaming, about the design of the feature. So this is one of the most important things that I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to show you some examples from the studio. This is like real examples, that I've experienced or my teammates have experienced. So there you are, drawing away whatever art asset you've been told to draw, right? And along comes a producer, and he says, hey, can you make that blue instead of green, right? And you think about it. Now you don't agree. Maybe you think that art asset that you're drawing should not be blue, right? But you don't say anything, and you do the change. Now we'll go into why you didn't say anything in a while, right? But these are really common issues that we've seen in the studio. Example number 2, similar, but slightly different. Here comes another game designer or a product lead, and he says, can you make that shiny? Right? I think some of you have heard this, so you're smiling. Right? So again, you think about it, but this time you say, hey, I don't think it should be shiny. I think it should be like matte or something because this is a wooden crate or something, right? And then the game designer says, yeah, but I want it shiny because we need more, jazz in the screen, right? So then you don't say anything and you get back to work and you incorporate that shine. Here's another very typical scenario in the studio. The game designer or a product lead or somebody from the team will be presenting a spec, which is basically a new feature that's going into the game. So it hasn't been developed yet. So they're going to talk about it with the team, right? Make sure the team understands. And the rest of the team, artists, designers, product leads, product people, QA, engineers will be listening to the game designer talk about the spec, and there'll be a lot of back and forth, people asking questions about the spec. I didn't understand that or whatever. Now, let's have a look. Let's say you're this artist in the back, and you don't agree with what this game designer is saying, right? You think you have a better idea, but again, you don't speak. I'll tell you why in a second, all right? Or maybe you're this other guy, and you don't even understand what he's talking about, all right? There's a lot of, game design and gaming jargon that's being used maybe, or maybe there's a lot of discussion going on and you just don't understand. Now you could ask, hey, I didn't understand that bit, can you explain that bit again? But you don't. Now we'll go into the whys. Again, this is like real world examples from artists we've talked to and the people who've worked with artists. The first reason is, I'm shy. I'm an introvert. I don't like to talk to people. I don't want to look stupid, right? Maybe I'm the only one that didn't understand that. And if I speak up, I will look stupid in front of everyone. I'm not interested. Maybe that's too small for you to see. That's Fred Flintstone sleeping in the corner, right? Now that non-interest could be like you've dozed off, or you were checking Facebook, or something else while the meeting's going on. Very common. Or you, once upon a time, in one of these meetings, you spoke up. Somebody else said, hey, that doesn't make sense. And then forevermore, you will never speak up again. All right? These are real things that have happened in the studio in all the game teams that I've been on. The other one is, I don't want that person to feel bad. I don't want them to think I'm complaining about their feature, so I won't say anything. And the last one, this one was a surprise to me. Peer pressure. In case you can't see it at the back again, this minion is saying, yeah, I've got something to say, right? And these two are going, what? Right? So basically what happens here is that later on, the artist, so later on what happens is the artist will go back into like a huddle or a group, and they'll say, what, man? You're being all smart all of a sudden. What's going on, right? And they'll hold you back, right? But the thing is, if you don't speak up in all of these, because of all of these reasons, well, maybe some other reasons, right, that I haven't mentioned here, you will not get the proper context, right? Remember that artist who was drawing the cow at the beginning? He lost context, right? He doesn't have the proper context. You will not have proper context of the feature. You will not be able to be more creative. You will not be able to add more, like creativity to the art asset by understanding the constraints and the opportunities that you have to be more creative. So you will not be like an effective artist. So the opposite of that artist that you don't want to be, which is tell me what to draw and I'll draw it artist. The opposite is being an effective artist. So if you are not getting the context, that means you can't be an effective artist. If you are not an effective artist, that means someone's going to tell you what to draw and how to draw it. That makes you a tell me what to draw, I'll draw it artist, or animate it, or model it, depending on what discipline you're in. Some tips. Ask lots of questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Game designers that I've talked to have said, I want the artist to ask me questions. I want them to question my feature because I want my feature to be awesome, right? Learn game dev terminology, DAU, MAU, opt-out, D1 retention, D7 retention. If you don't understand these terms, when you go into that spec review meeting, right, and they're talking about how they want their feature to, target the D7 retention, how they want that art asset to, make people come back, then you won't understand what's going on. You won't be able to engage in that conversation. Repeat key points. This is a technique that I use. Let's say someone has said something really complicated, and I didn't quite, I'm not sure if I got that correctly. What I'll do is, hang on a sec, let me repeat what you just said. Correct me if I'm wrong. Then I'll repeat that whole thing, and somewhere if I got it wrong, they will correct me, and I'll have a better understanding, right? And the last one, no, I think it's the second last one, I'm not sure. Speak up. You may have an awesome idea that the game designer or someone on the other team, the team, has not thought of, did not occur to them. Now, if you don't speak up, that idea will, just remain in your head. Defend your idea. That's the last one. Defend your idea and your point of view. That doesn't mean become defensive. That means, this is the reason I'm not having it shiny. This is the reason I'm not making it blue. And what happens then is you'll engage in a dialogue, right, with the game designer, whoever you're talking to. And you may say something that, that other person did not think of, right? And he will either agree with you or disagree with you, and then you will be convinced that, that dialogue will result in you understanding where he's coming from or she's coming from. And the product eventually becomes better because there's a third alternative where either you were wrong or he was wrong or both of you were wrong, and there's a third alternative that you can come up with. But that will only happen once you communicate and engage in that discussion. So we've covered communication and core skill, right? What's the next one? Have a look. Critical skill number 3. I'm going to show you another cartoon to see if you can understand what this is saying. Anyone want to take a guess?
Handling pressure.
I'm sorry?
Handling pressure.
Could be, but it's not.
The person who's so involved in his work, and the spider fallen and you don't even know.
Right, well, yeah, almost. You're on the right track, right? Go ahead. Thank you. Awesome, right? There's a fire going on, right? But you're like, hey, somebody else will handle this. It's not my problem. What is that?
I think that's coming from the other room.
Okay, right? So basically, this is talking about this critical skill called ownership. Okay? So I looked on the internet for a really nice definition for you. Okay, and when I looked at all the dictionary definitions, it was really confusing, right? Really complicated sentences. So I finally found something that is quite simple to understand. It said, it means not waiting for others to act and caring about the outcome as much as an owner of the company would. Right? Not waiting for others to act and caring about the outcome. Again, examples. A lot of teams use Skype or email or Slack to communicate problems or any discussions on the game. And frequently I've seen where an engineer or a product manager or somebody will put on that Slack message, hey, I saw this art asset in the game and it kind of looked wrong. And he takes a screenshot and he puts it up. And he says, does this look right to you guys? Is this correct? Now you would think that the artist will jump on board and say, hey, that's not working, right? That doesn't look right, right? But actually they don't. They don't bother to respond because the thinking is somebody else will do that, right? Here's another one, very often that I see every day. So an artist has been tasked with some art asset, and part of that asset creation involves the artist going to another member of the team and asking for some clarification, right? So at the end of the day, I come back to the artist and I say, hey, did you get that task done? And the artist says, I went to their desk. They weren't there, right? So the task didn't get done, right? The task still is pending, and he tried one avenue, that person wasn't there, and then he gave up. Somebody else will handle this. That person should have been at his desk, right? Another one is example 3 and 4 this. Basically, when you do your art task, whether it's concept art, modeling or animation or VFX or whatever, the thinking is, I do that, I pass it on, and that's it. That's my job done. But actually, that isn't. You're in a gaming studio. You're collaborating with other game dev teams, and you have to check whether the work that you did got passed down the line correctly, and how does it look in-game. You check on your phone. I'm at Moonfrog, so we have all our games on mobiles, so we'll check on the phone, on our mobile devices, as to whether the art asset is coming out correctly or not. And example 4 is, If you're on a new IP team, you are developing new games. Frequently, every time there's a major change, right, the engineers will put out a build onto your phones for everybody on the team to play test. And frequently, or almost all the time, artists are the one group who do not do the play testing. Again, the thinking is, somebody else will do that. I'm just here to do my art. This is another frequent occurrence. Artist does his work, goes to the game designer or whoever's looking at his work, and gets some feedback, comes back, does his work, and this loop keeps going on and on until the game designer is happy. It's not that the artist is happy, but the game designer is happy. Again, there's a lack of context. Reply to questions, all right? If somebody has put something up on Slack or email or whatever, it's your job, like you should care about the product so much, like the owner of the company would, as in that definition, that you will jump on and say, oh, hey, let me take a look at this. This doesn't look right. Follow through. Just doing your art is not enough. See where it ended up. What's the end product like on your device? Does it look right? If it doesn't look right, fix it. Be resourceful with problems. You went to that chair, it wasn't there. Is that the only way you can communicate with that person? Can you try phone? Can you try, like sending a message? Treat your game as your own property, right? Ownership means that. Treat your game as your own property, then you will care whether that person is there on his desk or not, right? Whether that art asset got addressed or not. So we've looked at communication, ownership, looking at the next one, critical skill number 4. One more cartoon, have a look. I don't know if you can read it at the back, let me read it for you. Modern art exhibition, right? This painting, and this is a real painting, by the way, okay? It was a massive blue canvas with a white stripe down the middle, right? Solid blue, solid white, and it sold for $43.8 million, okay? You're thinking, why am I in this GDC, okay? And this guy says, hey, I could have done that. And the other guy says, yeah, but you didn't, right? What's the message here? Anyone take a guess? Again, communication. Just blurt something out. It could be wrong. That's okay. Sorry? Could be procrastination, but it's not. Sorry?
Follow your passion?
Follow your passion? Well, no. This is still about gaming, actually.
They don't give it a try. They don't give it a try.
They don't give it a try. Yeah, along the right lines. Basically, it's initiative, right? So that critical skill that we're talking about now is initiative. And again, I scoured the internet to look for a good definition of initiative. And it is the ability to judge what needs to be done and take action, especially without suggestion from other people. Okay, just thinking about it, I could have done that, right? Is not enough. You've got to take action. You've got to be the one to do it. And this was from the Cambridge English Dictionary. And the very next line in the Cambridge English Dictionary was this. Okay, I'm going to read out the full thing. And it's all related to promotion and getting hired and everything. Lisa showed initiative on the job and was soon promoted. This is on the English, Cambridge English Dictionary, right? See the connection? Again, going back to that instance that I showed you earlier, go to the desk. Now, there are different types of initiative, small initiatives, large initiatives. This would be a small initiative. Hey, that person's not there. I can't talk to him or her, all right? Let me try phoning up. Let me try sending him an email. See what happens. You'll get the job done, basically. This is a slightly more engaged one. So frequently in game studios, you will be the artist who works with an outsourcing studio, all right? So they're not in your studio. They're in a completely different company, all right? And maybe you have 50 art assets to do, by Tuesday, right? You're not going to be able to do it yourself, so you outsource the work, right? So what happens is when the work comes back to you, you're giving the feedback, right? And if the quality is not up to the mark, you will give feedback and it'll go back and there'll be a couple of rounds of this, right? Now, assume, and this has happened again, these are all, every example that I've shown you have happened in the studio for real, right? So assume that the quality gets lower and lower, all right, over like a couple of weeks. Now, either you can just complain about it and say, oh, this art source company is so bad, they're giving us worse and worse, it's taking up all my time to give feedback. Or you can do something about it. And you would take it to the next level. An initiative shown here would be something like sending an email to the lead at that team, saying, hey, the quality is going down over the last couple of weeks, and I'm going into a lot of feedback cycle. Can we up that quality? What's going on? Can we fix this? Can we address this? And if that doesn't work, then you go to the next level. Hey, can you guys come over to the studio? I'll show you what's wrong. Here's the quality bar that we need to hit, and here's what you're hitting, all right? So then you can have a talk with the artist and the team lead, bring them in, maybe do a little bit of training if you have to, and get that quality bar up. That's taking initiative, and especially taking initiative if no one told you to do it. Another thing that we see often is, hey, I come in the morning on time, I'm not late, I do my work, right? And at the end of the day, I submit everything that I need to, and I go home on time, right? That's initiative. What more do you want? What more do you want? Tell me. And that's the opposite of initiative, right? To tell you what to do is the opposite of initiative. You've got to think of stuff yourself. Tips for increasing your initiative. Ask yourself, is there another way to do this? Is there another way to address this problem? Can I approach it in a different manner? Can I think of something else to get the work done? And once I've thought of it, take action. Make the things happen. Don't just wait for somebody else to do it. This is a tip that, again, I employ myself. I think of someone in the studio who shows more initiative than me, right? And I ask myself, if that person were in my position, what would he or she, how would they handle this situation? And that really helps you to think out of the normal, your thinking process. Communication, ownership, initiative, and core skills. What's the last one? Critical skill number 5. And here's another cartoon. Anybody want to take a guess? What is this saying? Okay. It is having fun. Huh?
Be a team player.
Yes, thank you. Right, so you are an artist in the gaming industry, and you have to play games. I mentioned this because, surprising as it is, a lot of artists that I've worked with do not play games or do not like playing games, and when you tell them to play games, it's like a chore, right? That's surprising, isn't it? Right? But it's very common. As an artist, you have to play games, and I'll tell you why. So this is going back to what I just said. Basically, when you enter the gaming industry, you've got to tell yourself that you are a gaming artist, right? A game artist. And the reason is that gaming, when you are gaming, it impacts all of these other areas. I'll show you how. When you are gaming, you develop a database of game visuals, gameplay, right, mechanics, the experience of playing, when you were delighted when you saw something, or when you were sad when you lost, right? All of these experiences and visuals you are kind of collecting in your head. And then you can use that as a jumping off point for any discussion that you are in, or just giving like new ideas and stuff, right? And then you can have these discussions with people based on the game refs that you have. Because if you're not playing games, then you won't be able to discuss a feature. Because when the features are discussed, the game designers are taking references from other games, right? And you won't be able to engage in that discussion because you don't have the same references in your head. So it'll impact your communication skills. It'll impact ownership. You'll be able to shape your game because you care about the game, because you've seen another game do something better than your game, and you say, hey guys, this game is doing it like this. Can we try something else here? Because you feel ownership for your product. And you will improve both the gameplay and the visuals. And when you're playing games, you get new ideas, right? When game designers come up with new features for a game, they don't think it up like, out of thin air, like it's never been done before, right? They're seeing something that's working in another game, and then they'll say, hey, that sounds like, I could modify that a little bit, bring it into my game, and it'll be a new feature in my game, right? And I don't know if you guys have read this book. It's called The Art of Stealing. Basically, it tells you that as an artist, no idea is original. You are basing it off of whatever experiences you've had, from childhood to now, whatever books you've read, whatever movies you've seen. It impacts you in a way where whatever ideas you're having, right, even if you think it's new, has been shaped by all your experiences, right? So when you play lots of games, it'll shape your experience there too, your visuals and your visual vocabulary. So you'll be able to come up with new ideas and inspiration. And the emotional experience that I'm talking about here is exactly what I said earlier. You will be delighted when you win, You will be surprised when you play games sometimes. You'll be scared when you play games sometimes. You'll be sad when you lose. So all of these emotional experiences impacts how you are thinking and the way, you will come up with new initiatives for your game. So parting notes. Practice. Just like you practice your art on a daily basis to get better, you have to practice communication, initiative, ownership in gaming. And one thing that I haven't mentioned yet is that there are different levels of communication and ownership and initiative in gaming, depending on what level you are at, right? So let's say you're a junior artist. Let's say you're a junior artist, and the people that you communicate with will be your peers, right? And maybe slightly more senior other artists. When you get to a senior position, you'll be communicating with your juniors, your peers, and maybe lead and art directors. When you're at art director level, you're communicating with juniors, your peers, and much more senior people, right? VPs, presidents, vice presidents, right? The owner of the business unit that you are in. And the communication at that level has to be such, as an art director, you need to be able to convince that level of people why your idea is a good idea to go into the game, why you disagree with what they are saying. You need to be able to convince them. So that means that your communication skills need to be at a different level over there compared to what you have as a junior artist, right? So concluding thought for you, if you want to level up, if you want to get hired, if you want to get promoted, right? Don't be a tell me what to draw, I'll draw it artist. Thank you. So please give feedback. This is the code that you need to scan. Any questions?
We are not of action adventures. The company makes cartoon or
Sure. So let me repeat the question for everybody else. The question is, your company makes casual games. What if you like action games, right? Action RPG, strategy, and all of this. Now, if I said that you are on my team and we make a casual game, do you think I will expect you to play casual games? No? Really? You wouldn't be playing it, which means that we'll go back to that thing of you won't have enough context. You won't be able to be as creative as you could be if you were playing games and getting your ideas from these other games as well, right, in that genre. You'll be getting your ideas from action strategy games. It may or may not work here, right? So I would expect you to play the kind of games that we're making so that to inform you better, so that you make the kind of art that is visually appealing and it works for this game that we're making, and you have enough context that you are able to be creative while you're doing it. Make sense?
Morning, sir. This is Akash.
Where are you? Okay.
I'm here. So in the start, you have explained us about a trap, right? So were you in the trap at any point of your?
Yes, absolutely. I'll tell you how. Right? Did everyone understand that question? Was I myself in that trap? Yes. So I actually came from a non-gaming background. Right? I was in movies, and I was in Bombay for about 5 to 6 years in a movie company. And when I joined Zynga, I didn't have any gaming context, right? So I went into those spec review meetings. That was me. Okay, some of those were me, some of those were other artists. I went into those spec review meetings in the beginning, and everything was flying over my head because I didn't understand the jargon. I didn't have those reference points that I was telling you about, right? So I had to learn all of that myself so that I could be an effective art director and not just, I don't know what happened in that meeting, but now I need to do this art, right?
What steps did you take so that you came out of the trap?
So one of the things that I did, right, was I asked a colleague of mine. He was actually giving a talk on in that room just before us, and I asked him, "Hey, if you had to say, anything, give me critical feedback, what would it be?" And you know what he said? He said, and this was in San Francisco, right? We were all in San Francisco. I was at Zynga at the time. And we'd been having all these spec review meetings there. And he said, when we go into these meetings, you are super quiet, right? And I know that you know your art. I know you are really good at, all the other things. But when we go into that spec review meeting, you need to speak up because everyone else is speaking up, but you're not. So I would say that is your weakest, that's the feedback that I would give you. So that opened my eyes, right? And then I made it a point. And again, I can't just start communicating if I don't have that base knowledge. So that base knowledge meant that I needed to start playing games. All right? I wasn't playing games. I came from a background where my mom said, "You're wasting time playing games, stop playing games," right? So I had to force myself to play games. But once I started playing games, then I realized, it is an entertainment form, right? You do get entertained playing this, right? It's just like watching TV or watching a movie. It's an entertainment form. So once I started enjoying games, then I understood, okay, this is what the game designer is talking about. Surprise and delight, right? There's a term that we use. And then slowly, it didn't happen overnight. Slowly, I became more and more effective.
When you are going on about making a new prop or a new environment or any such thing, and you have a concept or you have in mind that, okay, I think I'm going to make a small sort of, like a prayer pyre or some sort of thing, how do you think out of the box and how do you put your own creative ideas? Do you still look at references online, or do you just can you take me through your process of just thinking on it?
I'll give you an example that happened fairly recently. Again, it's one of something that happened in the studio. The asset that he needed to create was a chest, a treasure chest, right? And it had to fit the game that we were working on, which was Ludo. Okay. Now, the brief that was given to the artist was make a treasure chest that looks really cool, that people will want to open, that people will want to collect, right? The players will want to collect. And so this artist made that treasure chest. It looked cool, awesome, right? But it had nothing to do with Ludo. Okay, so then I said, hey, this is the game. This needs to fit the game here, right? Now think in terms of Ludo. Now you're thinking that concept itself. You're thinking, okay, how do I bring some element of the game, the Ludo, into that treasure chest? Can I add some kind of a relief on the treasure chest sides, right? You know, where the structure and the supports are of the treasure chest, right? Can I bring it at the top? Can I bring it at the bottom? Is there something I can do with the color that, you know, is reflective of the colors in the game? So you will be thinking like that. Does that answer your question?
Say you were given a brief to draw an asset of a culture that you were not really familiar with. Say it's about like feudal Japan or something, that you are not really familiar with that particular environment. So how do you go about doing research on that particular culture to create that asset?
Now, I'll give you another example, right? To hopefully it'll answer your question. Did everyone understand that question? If you have something that you are not familiar with, the brief is like do feudal Japan, and you have to do research. How do you do that research, right? Correct? Yeah. So I'll give you an example. So at one point, I was trying to get the artists to play games, right? And I said to one particular artist, hey, can you play this game? Because there's something that happens at level 20, right, that you will be surprised with, okay? And what did he do? He looked it up on YouTube, okay? He watched somebody else play that game, right? Now, that totally defeats the purpose, right? Because when you are actually going through playing that game from level 1 to level, you will, you know, go through a period of like, oh, this is really hard, this is tough, this is interesting, and then, whoa, that surprise happened, right? But that won't happen if you're watching somebody else play that game, because you're not going through that entire experience, right? So the research that you would do has to be like in a multifold, right? Not just, you know, looking up Google images. Can you watch a movie? For instance, watch a movie, because the movies will give you a really accurate depiction of what it feels like to be in Japan. You can read a book, but that doesn't give you visual thing, but it will give you a feeling. You can read up, you know, you can look it up on, you know, Google it, and you get loads of images on feudal Japan. But does that give you a, you know, a sense of what feudal Japan was actually about, right? Feudal Japan, if you have read this book called Shogun, he describes this thing where the liege lord, right, the samurai liege lord, was like a god, okay, to the rest of the, you know, the lower ranked samurais. And what happens is this guy is in a, you know, like on a beach, you know, off the cliff, and he's meditating by the seashore, and the samurai is trying to call his attention. He can't get him. So because they have a sense of this immaculate duty, right, samurais, he throws himself off the cliff. He makes a sound, right, next to that guy, right, right, when his body lands. And then the, you know, the samurai liege lord wakes up and says, oh, they're calling me, and he goes off, right? So you won't get that by looking at images on the, you know, or Googling images up. You have to look at a bunch of reference stuff that'll help you to get a better idea, better context.
So sorry, asking you last minute. So you said, do not be tell me what to do or tell me what to draw. I'll draw artist. But sometimes artists do have to take a leap of faith, right? Like we have to take a leap of faith of if the client says do this, we have to do that no matter what. So then how do you approach it? Like we can't be creative. It's something that we have to do.
So remember what I said in the gaming section? What was the very first slide? I showed you like critical skill number 5 is gaming.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And then I showed one particular slide with just text on it, one line of text. What was that? Do you remember?
Cannot.
It basically said you need to do a mind reset, that I am a gaming artist. Right? This might not apply if you are in advertising or some other industry, but as a gaming artist, right, your client is your team. Your client is you because you play that game. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Okay. But sometimes your client says, no, you have this, you have to do it. But
no, again, you're kind of like thinking, you know, this is like your, you know, advertising agency artist where a client is a separate entity. It's not. The players who play your game, right? And that, again, if you are gaming and you are playing your own game, on a daily basis. You are that client, right? You will get a brief. Draw this chest. Draw this treasure chest. Draw 3 treasure chests, bronze, silver, gold, right? But you have the freedom and the liberty and the to be more creative in making that a Ludo-looking chest or whatever, right? And a more awesome-looking chest, right? It's up to you as long as you understand the context and you haven't lost the context like that artist did in the Gary Lawson cartoon that I showed you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And how do you see a person has a good skill or great skills in drawings or anything like that?
So basically, right, when we hire people, exactly through that process I took you in the beginning, right, we look at their core skills, right? If we're just looking at their core skills, they need to be able to hit the quality bar of the game that we are envisioning that we're going to be, that artist is going to be working on, right? So for instance, I'll give you an example. If you are applying for, a job at, let's say, Riot Games, Riot Games, right? If you look at their website, they say that you have to have played their game. You have to be at a very high level. Okay, so they're making sure that you do play games. And then it says that your portfolio should show the kind of art that they do at that quality. So when you ask me that question, how do I make the difference? Does your art hit the quality bar that I am expecting? Right? Does it hit the quality bar of the game that I am working on, that I want you to be working on? That's my measuring point. Does that answer your question? Thank you.